Good evening.
Welcome to Clark Atlanta University Art Museum and our conversation this evening. I hope you have take some time to go through the exhibition. It is our pleasure to have this esteemed panel here. And I'm going to have Clark Brown, the curator, who curated in the sense that somebody had to make sure the installation in this space made sense. So she is our local curator, but we will have the original curators who will talk to you tonight, and she's going to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Oh, better. I'm just going to briefly introduce our speakers for this evening on this panel. I'm going to start on this side. We have Mr. Kerry Davis, who is a local collector and art advocate as well, and has previously showcased his collection here in this space. Dr. Eric Key, who is the director of the museum at the University of Maryland Global Campus, where Freddie's exhibition debuted last year before it came here. And of course, we have none other than Mr. Freddie Styles, whose beautiful work is here in the gallery. And last but not least, Ms. Halima Taha, who is a art historian, writer, curator extraordinaire. And if you all have not read in the catalog for Uncommon Nature, Halima also wrote the essay in that catalog. And she will be moderating for us this evening. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Well, good evening. And thank you all for joining us for this conversation, celebrating the work and legacy of Freddie Styles, an artist whose 6-decade practice has shaped the visual language of Southern abstraction and expanded our understanding of how memory, land, and lived experience can transform into a world of color, rhythm, and organic form. Tonight's panel brings together 3 voices whose perspectives illuminate different dimensions of this exhibition's journey. First, Freddie Styles, whose work anchors this moment. His paintings carry the emotional intelligence of someone who has spent a lifetime observing the natural world, not as scenery, but as a living archive of memory, labor, and spiritual experience. His evolution from figuration to abstraction reflects a deepening conversation with nature, time, and the inner landscape. We are also joined by Eric Key, director of the Global Campus at the University of Maryland, where this exhibition originated. Under his leadership, UMD has championed artists whose work expands a cultural understanding across regions and disciplines. His vision helped launch this exhibition and set the stage for this cross-regional journey from Maryland to Clark Atlanta University. And finally, Kerry Davis, a collector, a friend, and cultural steward. His commitment to preserving and elevating Black art has shaped one of the most respected private collections in the country. His relationship with Freddie Styles, grounded in trust, insight, and shared history, played a meaningful role in bringing this exhibition together. Together, these 3 perspectives allow us to explore not only the art itself, but the ecosystems that sustain it, the institutions that present it, the collectors who preserve it, and the communities that give it context and meaning. This conversation is an opportunity to reflect on legacy, stewardship, and the power of collaboration across regions and generations. It is also a moment to honor the artist at the center of it all, Freddie Styles, whose work continues to grow, breathe, and reveal layers with every encounter. So Freddie, your work is rooted in the natural world, memory, land, and the cycles of growth and return. How has your relationship to nature shaped the evolution of your abstraction over the last 6 decades?
Okay. I guess it started when I was just a little kid. I was, the day after I learned how to ride a bicycle, I got my foot caught and went to a country doctor who, if he was still alive, should be sued. Because he bound it tightly as if it was broken, and I kept picking at the bandage. And I said, boy, leave that bandage alone, but a voice in my head said, get that bandage off your foot. So when I did, this is not pleasant, there was a round hole in my ankle, and out of that hole came this putrid stuff. And my mother cried because she realized that if I hadn't gotten the bandage off, I probably would have lost my foot. But she put me out on the porch, and I started just observing the textures around me. We lived in a shack. When I say shack, I mean a not very sturdy clapboard house, not a speck of paint on it, with a tin roof and a well outside, chickens, hogs, and a cow named Bessie. But sitting there, I asked her to draw me something, so she drew me a chicken that looked like the chickens in the yard. And so after copying her chicken, I just started to look around at the texture of the wood, the texture of the stones and leaves and things in my surroundings. And that started me just observing my surroundings. I think of myself as going through life like this big machine, taking in stuff with these two things right here, funneling it through this gray stuff up here, and recycling it into what you see. I've done a number of, titles like Spring Awakening, Misty Morning, Sunrise, Sunset, where I celebrate, like I tell people all the time, this time of year is magical because I can read why plants go dormant and come alive in the spring. But on some level, it's still magical to me. It's like mystery. And the shack we lived in, I remember how fascinated I would find the frozen condensation on the windows. It was just like magical. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yes. Keep talking.
Well, I tell people all the time, I don't really like doing these artist talks because I don't know that I have much of anything to share, but I learned from Ely Mays. You just have to say something. And when we were at Adama with CCH Pounder, you have to say something. So I'll often ask, did I answer your question?
Well, I love when you talk about your work and your experiences. It always adds great depth and insight into the beautiful spirit that you are. Not all talented and wonderful artists are good people. And it's always a joy when you're able to appreciate someone's gift, but they're a really solid and decent human being. So that's why I have great pleasure in listening to what you have to say.
May I interject 1 second?
Yes.
Freddie, as you were talking, you said some things that I didn't realize, but as you were talking, every painting on this back wall came to life because it began to take shape in another view. From my own background or some of the audience background, the landscape, the sun's popping through, the deepness of the fields where you can, as far as you can see, and the darkness turned into light. All of these paintings came to light. So what you said made sense.
Made a lot of sense.
Everyone who knows me knows that I'm full of stories. But I have a quick story about a professor, Alfred Mazzani, who was on the staff here. He and his wife came to buy to look at some work years ago, and he said, we've all probably had this conversation. He could say, "What is this?" And I could hear him think, "Shit." So I said, "Alfred," I said, "this is a gentle breeze. Like, these paintings about natural phenomena." I said, "This is a gentle breeze. This is spring rain." And as I started to explain the work, I could see the look on his face change. So about a month after that, they were out for dinner, and Alfred was explaining the work to the people.
Eric, what made Freddie Styles' work compelling for the University of Maryland Global Campus to champion? And how did the exhibition align with UMD's mission of global arts engagement?
In a nutshell, it was his style. As a teaching institution, we're always looking for the unique and the unique in creating works of art. I think when we drove down one time, it was three of us, and we visited with Freddie, of course by invite from Kerry. I began to learn something about how he was creating the works. So it became almost a natural when we had the opening, because it was by chance, yes. We had an opening in the schedule. Kerry and I had already spoken some time ago, so I made that phone call to Kerry, said, "You think Freddie would want to do this?" And I think it was the first show that we've traveled 10 hours to get to pick up the works. And it was all about the conversation in the works for us, and exploring your style, your technique, and how you were creating these colorful works. At the same time, they were a part of you. And we would just simply want to share that with our audience. And I think that's what university galleries do. We're not only, supporting the artists in their careers and promoting them, but we're also sharing. It's easy just to put works on the wall and just run off and go to the beach, but it's more about the audiences coming in and having that exposure. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. Like I said, sitting here, most of the works I'm looking at now back here, I saw that when I was hand-picking the works, with some challenges, of course. But it was those things that I thought that our audience could begin to look at, they could digest them, and then they can explore other works about how he did X, Y, and Z in his paintings.
Kerry, you've known Freddie personally and professionally for years. What insights into his artistic evolution do you feel uniquely positioned to share, especially as someone who has witnessed his journey up close?
I've seen an evolution, but I want to go back to Madison, Georgia, where he was born. My mother's mother was born in Madison, Georgia. So as a family, we would, go back there. And Freddie was born in the 40s. This was a horrible place for people of color. If you want to read something horrible, well, it's a story, but Raymond Andrews, Benny Andrews' brother, the last radio bait, tell you the climate of the 40s in Madison, Georgia. And I experienced some of it in our visits, but nothing like, the people who work for those planter families. The amazing thing for me is to see this beauty, the colors, the landscape out of a horrible place, and how something beautiful came out of Madison, Georgia, and what he did, So I'm losing. I'm gonna start answering another question because I forgot what all you said.
It's okay. I want this to be as natural as possible. You can flow with it.
Okay.
So relax.
So I've been following his work. I saw Freddie's work before I ever met Freddie, but on my mail route the Keon Gallery. Was that Keon?
Yeah,
Is that
Keon.
correct? I used to see the black and white series. I called it black and white. Black, silver, and white.
Studied in black, white, and silver.
Thank you. And saw it for years. Then I started to notice he worked in different series. And, I just get excited. Then, Freddie was untraditional in that he would use azalea roots and pine needles as his paintbrush. And, then some of the textures. I just get, because, I can't draw a straight line, but I get so excited or fascinated with all the artists I know at the talent that they have. And I just think Freddie was just so worthy just over the years. And he lived a very modest life, very lean life. And, many artists don't get a chance to see this day come. And he's so worthy. And I thought that when Eric called, I call Freddie. A lot of people call me the Freddie Whisperer. Because
I can attest to that because when I was working on the essay, I wanted to have a conversation with Freddie, and I must have called a half a dozen times. And then I had to call you
Yeah.
in order to get him to pick up the phone.
So I am now, and I have been for years, a filter to get to Freddie Styles. There was a trust he placed in me, and, it just happened like that. I'm going to jump ahead just in case we don't get to it if somebody is here. This painting back here in the back, if you turn the top blue, green, and the yellow at the bottom, it's called Kerry's painting.
Yes.
And this was one of the periods when he transformed. He stopped doing the black, silver, white study. And when I first saw that style, I just went nuts. Those are Kerry colors. I love landscapes, and I love those colors. And, people often ask, well, Kerry, I saw your painting at auction. Kerry, I said, no, that's not my painting. That's just the title of a series. But that was that. So I just threw that in there. You didn't ask me that question.
That's
so.
okay. It's a good story. Freddie, you began with the human figure before moving into organic abstraction. What did abstraction allow you to express that figuration could not? And how do you see those early impulses still living in your work?
Well, in 1979, this might not make any sense, but I'm going to tell it. In 1979, my fraternal grandmother died, Eva Booker. And being in the funeral car with my mother, sister, and father for the first time since my mother and father parted in 1952, when I returned to it, because when I was doing figurative work, I would say, who are these people? Where'd they come from? So when I returned to Atlanta, I started to have a flood of memory of having been illustrating the pain of my nuclear family in the figurative work. I didn't want to do that anymore. I thought about how I had survived those dismal days in Madison, Georgia, and I would always turn to nature. And so it was kind of what saved me. So I had a show at a place called the Phoenix Art and Culture Center where I purged all those figurative paintings. There was a big painting of my father's mother. It was like these triangles, and I was kind of on the outside of the triangle, but there was Lily Mae under greener grass, where my father, when they used to fight, the name I heard my mother call was that Lily Mae Taylor. We're not going to have to censor in Maryland. I'm not going to use the language I used in Maryland. So she was the reason my mother left my father. And so nature was what saved me. And that's how I gave up the figures and turned to what saved me.
Yes.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
I'd like to add something to the Kerry's painting. In 2012, I had a show at Bill Hodges Gallery. Before that show, Kerry saw a small piece on paper, 15 by something. And when Bill Hodges saw it, he said, I'm taking this on the plane with me because I know who will buy it. But when Kerry saw the small piece on paper, he said, Freddie, can you reinterpret this in a larger format on canvas? And I said, what size? He said, 30 by 30. And I did. And that small painting that Bill Hodges, he sold it to a collector, Patricia, I think, Scripto Brim. Her collection was sold at Swan in January of last year. And that was the first Kerry's painting, and they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they got to 4 by 6.
Eric, this exhibition represents a rare cross-regional partnership between UMD and Clark Atlanta University. What do you believe this collaboration reveals about the role universities can play in elevating Black artists across geographic and academic boundaries?
Nutshell, important role. University, well, the collaboration is one thing, but university galleries in general, just highlighting and promoting, starting with their local artists, and then sharing that information. In this case, it was, we knew an artist, we saw the work, we brought it to Maryland, and then Ms. Taylor came up, saw the exhibition, and wanted it to come here. And of course, Freddie wanted the work to be in his hometown. We were ready for the work to come home to Freddie. But it became a natural because there's an audience here. And probably an audience that may or may not have seen his work, but have seen him over the years. And that's generally what we do as collectors, art administrators, is to get out into the community and find those rare jewels. And those jewels that we can put in context, because we all know that artwork reads differently than in the studio, than in the gallery space. And once you put it up on the wall, it takes on a different life of its own. And it's that life that what we try to do is to share with, I keep saying our audience, but really it's the world audience. Because in this day of technology, it's out there. Images, the talk, just like a talk just like this one, you sharing information. You're hearing from the artist himself as to why he did a painting or what it means to me. You hear people who are looking at the exhibition and they're talking about and trying to put it in context in terms of, is it landscape, is it abstract, is it abstract landscape, is it realism, all of these things. But the most important part is the artist who had the creativity to produce the work. And then our role is to present the work and present it in a context where you begin as a viewer to take something back and begin that conversation with the next generation of viewers, people who want to come in or who may have not seen those shows. So university galleries always have been important. They've been important to me as a developer in art administration because I came out of the School of Hampton University. At that time, it was Hampton Institute. It was art all over the campus. I came from a community where the chickens roamed the yard, not the pen. They roamed the yard. And we had hogs. We had, you could go out at night and look like you could reach the sky and touch the stars. On a clear and a dark night, and just realize it was just beauty. And as a kid, you're looking at this and you're amazed, but at the same time, you're trying to find answers. And I think those were the answers. Hampton began to give me those answers when I went there and there was art on its campus. But not only art, but art by someone who looked like me. And that became very, very important to me in my career. Early on, read about all of these artists who were doing wonderful work, but they were not seen by larger museums. I hate that word, M-A-J-O-R, larger museums. When We took field trips, we didn't see them in the museum. They're not identified there. But when you went on to campus like CAU or to Hampton, these are works done by artists of color that rival, and you read their stories. Bannister, who won all kinds of awards, but he couldn't receive the awards because what? He realized he was black. So it was those things that I think pushed most of us not only to show the work, but also to collect the work, because they're works that have a meaning. They have a meaning to us personally, and hopefully to those who see them. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. You played a key role in helping pull this exhibition together. What compelled you to support this project, and what did you feel was at stake if Freddie's work wasn't given this platform?
What compelled me? Well, one, I wanted to get it out of my house. That was enough. You know, art is to be seen. That's why it's created. And Freddie, you know, I've seen so much of his work, and I think I may have, and you can correct me, I may have seen more of his work. Not that I have more of his work, but I may have seen more of his work than anybody other than Leroy, his partner. And pretty amazed, and one thing I wanted you to see, 6 decades of the work. Brenda and Larry Thompson has been tremendous supporters of Freddie Styles, but they haven't seen the vault. They've seen a lot of it, you know. And sometimes artists hold things back because Kerry Davis will bug them to death about relinquishing it, or you know, or something like that. But I wanted him to have his day. I really did. And then, you know, because of the fire and how all of this happened, I think it was a term Brenda used, a God wink, that made this possible. What you see is the work that you were supposed to see. And yeah, any way I could help Freddie get it to market or get it to the public, I was going to do everything. And I did. Me and my wife, I just had come off rotator cuff surgery, but logistically, I mean, to the framer and the truck over here to get it photographed, all the things that, you know, you really don't take into consideration when you come here and see such a beautiful thing, all the logistics behind it, whatever it took, and whoever I could call upon. And he's so loved in this community that was not an issue. Everybody, community came together to make it happen.
Thank you. Freddie, hello.
Hello. Into the mic.
This exhibition has traveled from the University of Maryland to Clark Atlanta University. What does it mean to you to see your work interpreted across different regions, audiences, and institutional cultures?
Okay. I'd like to give a quick backstory. I developed the desire to have a larger exhibition of my work because there's a small museum in Buckhead, Georgia, near where I was born. And my gallery person, September Gray, had mounted a couple of shows at the Stephen Thomas Museum that did not include my work. As they say in Hood, I felt some kind of way about that. So when I had the opportunity to enter, because I haven't entered shows in a long time, but they sent out a call for artists, and the focus of the show was called Queer Perspectives, word I don't like. But I immediately entered the show. I sent work, and the director of the Stephen Thomas Museum, because of my narrative mentioning that we lived in the east end of Madison, Georgia, which was very close to Buckhead. We were going to visit Aunt Bessie, and it was a short ride. So she accepted my work in the show and provided me a small one-person show within the body of the larger show. There were 20 pieces in a special room. So that kind of made me want a bigger show. So when I saw Kevin Cole's show at the University of Maryland, I said, Kerry, is this somewhere I might want to have a show? And the wheels turned, and he told me to answer my phone when Eric called, and I did. And
Just
I
once?
was
You
on
only
a
called him
panel
once?
here at Clark Atlanta, sitting next to Edna Jackson, trying to digest this long, exhaustive definition he gave of his work. I don't do that. But I looked around and I said, I told them about my show in Maryland, and I said, I would love for my show to come to this beautiful place that I love so much and have such a long history with. And Dr. Taylor said, I'll see what I can do. And this is what she did. Because I heard about the Atlanta University annuals when I was in 5th grade. I was sent to a room to show a lady some of my work. And she suggested I should be an artist. Now, this was in 1955. I don't know if we were colored or Negro, but we weren't black. I didn't know that a person with this wonderful skin tone could be an artist. She told me about Harold Woodruff and Henry Otana, both of whom have ties to Atlanta, and about Jules Simon, a practicing artist in Atlanta at the time, and about the Atlanta University annuals. It took me 10 years to get here, but I'm fortunate to have I'm one of the probably few living artists who participated in the Atlanta University annuals between 1965 and 70. And I feel really honored, to have my work here. And I've mentioned this before, when this show came together, I sent the three of you an email expressing my appreciation for the team of people that got pulled together on my behalf to make this happen. Thank you is, it's not a strong enough word, but it's all I have. So I feel, and when you wrote the essay, I sort of said, is that me? Did I answer your question?
Yes. Eric wants to add something, and then I'm going to ask you a question when you finish.
Okay. I wanted to elaborate because we all have gotten our recognition, but we hadn't recognized Halima. When we decided to do this show, we had to think about putting the work in historical context and who could best do that under a short time period. Halima and I have known each other for a while and had done some other writing for me at the university. And I had no idea that she always wanted to write about Freddie. So I called her, and she was like a kid in a candy store. She wanted to do this project. And so she did. And what she wrote, I almost said, is that Freddie? But that's the kind of dynamic writer that Halima is. So let's give her recognition.
So as a collector, Eric, an arts leader, how do you see Freddie Styles' work contributing to the broader narrative of Southern Black abstraction, and why was it important for UMD to help, again, bring the story forward, now from the perspective as a collector?
Well,
It's different.
Yeah, different. As a collector, we tend to acquire works that resonate with us. For me as a collector, I wanted to resonate with me, not only my experiences, but I also want to see the challenges that the artists have had and how they've placed that challenge on canvas, on paper, in what we call fine art. I'm often looking for artists who just want to make art. I don't look for artists who simply say, I sold that piece, can you make me one? And they say yes, for different reasons. I like the uniqueness of the work. Once it resonates with me, then I can live with it. And there have been works that, some people say, well, how can you put a lynching scene on your wall or an image of the KKK sign in your house and live with that and walk by it day by day? Easy, because that's my history. And from that history, I can grow. So I don't look at those things in a negative way. Again, as a collector, is just finding those jewels. And most of it is the same thing that I do in my professional role. I can't do it sitting behind the computer these days. Back then, we didn't, was it 482? We didn't have all the computer. So it was very important to go into the galleries, into artist studios, into the mess, because all artist studios are not organized. But for me, it gave me a sense of energy to flip through stacks and stacks and paintings lined up against the wall to find that's the one. And a lot of the times, what the artists think is the best work is not necessarily what the collector or the institution think is a good work or what they want to show. In this one, it was 6 decades, trying to tell his story from the figurative, where you started to where you are as of today. Now, what was the second part of that question? Did I answer it? Maybe not. I didn't answer it. Okay.
No, you did. You did. You did. I was just thinking about something. Yeah, you did answer that question.
Well, again, it's not, talking to artists that I'm going to use the term dealing with artists because you have to deal with them. That dealing means that you also have to respect them. You respect their creativity, you respect their personality, you respect all of it in order to get it from their hands to these walls. And as Kerry alluded to, there are a lot of steps that go to that. And sometimes it's institutions that have the wall space, but doesn't necessarily have the budget.
Right.
And that was the one thing that with the University of Maryland Global Campus, we didn't have the budget to hire a fine art shipper, but we had the resource in terms of the van, the labor, and we knew where the work was. Mm-hmm. So we just got on the road and made it a road trip. Well, they did, because I didn't do it. My staff did. I came down earlier, flew down very comfortably in coach and selected the work. But then they came and they wrapped it, got it there, made sure the condition reports were done, meaning that they had to unwrap it, look at it, give detailed reports, every scar, every frame niche or scratch, all of that, because that's a part of the work that we have to go through. Not only to say that this was like this when it came in, we want to make sure it goes out, either in the same way or better. And for us, we've dealt with artists that, just came and they just dropped it off. But what I teach my staff, it has to leave in a different way. So they make sure they wrap it correctly and protect it from those scratches, because those are the things now that affect me as a collector. I want the best representation of the work in the best condition of the work.
Speaking of collectors, Kerry, as a collector and cultural steward, how do you see Freddie Styles' legacy influencing the next generation of artists, collectors, and institutions committed to preserving the work of Black American artists?
I don't know if I can really answer that as far as how it influences other artists. I'm just not connected with what other artists do, and how they see things. So I don't know how to answer that, but
Yeah.
sure. What was the second part of that? Sorry.
How his legacy influences the next generation of collectors and institutions, artists, collectors, and institutions.
Artists, collectors, and institutions. Well, other collectors, I think when they look out, and collectors, some are competitive, or some have reverence and respect for other collectors. When they see Eric Key owns a Freddie Styles painting, or other institutions, they have, this guy has a really good eye, and Freddie may be someone to look at and to collect, and in that respect. So I would say that would be the same for institutions as well. I've seen Freddie's work in the marketplace, and not much traction, and then one may sell at auction at a at a good price, And again, that may be, they consider this something worthy to have. This guy has a following, the work is good. But oftentimes, good work alone just doesn't get it, So, yeah, I think just the relationship, or how they see Freddie's work in the marketplace, other collectors, the interest in it, will have an effect on other collectors, or they would desire it in institutions as well.
I was just going to talk a little bit about the artists and their relationship with one another, because I think that's important. It used to be a time when artists would have I guess they were just studio visits. They would get together and do critiques and all of that about their works. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because I think artists sometimes, just like administrators, we're in our world and we're interested in producing what we want to produce in a way, in a manner in which we want to produce it. But sometimes when you talk to another artist and you look at another artist's work and they explain why they have this brush stroke here, or they've carved this there and they left that out and put this in, you begin to think about your work differently. And you opt to whether or not you're going to change it, or you're going to make some adjustments in the work, but yet still staying true to your style and who you are as an artist. A conversation really goes a long way. And we were talking about the annuals, the Clark Atlanta annuals, the biannuals where artists can participate. I always encourage artists to participate in those juried exhibitions. If nothing else comes out of it, the curators become aware of who you are, and they begin to look at your work. If you're just in your gallery producing, that used to be good because we would find you. But now we want to see you, and we're trying to get to as many artists as we possibly can. And a lot of these annuals serve that purpose. And once those works are up on the wall, then those visiting artists who are coming through the door, they begin to see different artists creating different things. And they begin to take on those same traditions, or they change, or they push in the envelope on what they're creating. We got to remember, there are a lot of visual artists out there. There are plenty of them. There are plenty. So what makes one person's artwork different from someone else to collect, or we make those decisions. And sometimes it's just those juried exhibitions where you can see multiple of different styles created by different artists, regardless of whether or not they're African American, Latino, et cetera, but you can see them. And I guess that's one of my challenges today as we're moving further and further into we're all just Americans. I still want to know the cultural background of the person who created the artwork, because I'm a strong believer that African American art and those artists who create it has something that's uniquely different in their work. Not only their stories, their history, but it's something in there that's different. And I think that's what has captured my imagination to want to support African American artists.
Thank you. You think? So, Freddie, when you look across 6 decades, the 6-decade arc, what questions are you still exploring in your work, and what continues to surprise you?
What questions am I exploring, and
What continues to surprise you in the studio when you're painting? Yeah.
well, that I'm still here.
Oh.
That I'm still here. I tell people that there's a reason I'm here. When many, many years ago, because of my personal history, I was suicidal. I tried it, and it didn't work, thankfully. I was pulled from the fire. I had surgery. So I'm just as happy as a pig in slop to still be here. And I keep telling people I see these rainbows because I see, when we were here, Mike Harris and I were here with what's his name, Randall? Not Randall. What was his name? Cameron. I mentioned rainbows. He said, well, does that have anything to do with Jesse Jackson? I said, oh, no. To me, it has to do with after a violent storm, there's this rainbow. So I think that being pulled from the fire, surviving my surgery, that there's this rainbow. And for many years, I thought of myself as an ordinary person, but at some point I accepted that I'm not, that I'm quite special.
Yes, you are.
And there's,
Yes, you are.
it was hard for me to, and I'm not going to pull out the cello and tell y'all the backstory, but there was a reason I didn't feel special. But having gone through all of that stuff, I don't know, did that sort of kind of answer your question?
It most certainly did.
Y'all know I ramble.
No, we're with you. Now, I have a final question that's optional for either Kerry or Eric or both of you to answer, and then I am going to conclude the question and answer to even perhaps open up questions if people want to ask. But what do you hope institutions and collectors learn from Freddie Styles' journey about sustaining artists whose contributions unfold over a lifetime rather than a moment?
Repeat the question.
What do you hope institutions and collectors learn from Freddie Styles' journey about sustaining artists whose contributions unfold over a lifetime rather than a moment?
I'll kick it off.
You want to kick it off? Oh, over a lifetime, if they can show some patience or hang in there. I know it may be difficult for institutions, whomever, but over a lifetime, because time will tell, his story isn't finished yet. But if you see work, if you identify work, if you identify good work, if you identify a dedicated artist, support him, stay with him. And I think in the end, after it's all said and done, that would have been an excellent investment. Finish it up for me, brother.
Actually, you gave the answer, because I was going to simply say the institution learns that we really learned that an artist with this kind of history is right there. It's in your neighborhood, your backyard. Most of the time, artists in their local community are taken for granted. Even as collectors, we can get that later. But I think institutions learn that you don't have to have 6 decades to produce wonderful work. It just happened in this exhibition, it was 6 decades. But there are other artists out there, younger artists who are doing this, creative, just as creative and producing wonderful work. So it is, the institution is to, let me back up. It's a balance between the institution and the artist. Because a lot of the time, sometimes we can get to the studio, but whenever you're inside the institution, you need to make yourself known. Pass out a card, pass out a book, a brochure, anything that we can easily put our hands on. Technology tells us that I'll email you something, and that's good. But what I've realized is that what you email just serves as a stepping stone for what I see. And oftentimes what I see is not necessarily what you have sent me to see, because it differs. And it takes on a different life when you see it up front and close. But I think, again, it's the institutions that needs to get out there and get to know what's in their community, who's in their community, what they're doing. Because like Freddie, I mean, he's been a curator, he's done that. He was an advocate, he's done that. He's an artist, he's done that and still doing that. And he has something to say in what he's producing as an artist. But I can guess out of the audience, there are artists out here who are doing the same thing. And it's just a matter of time for an example, me to get to know them and for them to get to know me. And all this cycle of participating and making yourself known, as many cards as I get, give them to me. When we're setting our exhibition, usually 2 years out, I tend to go back through those cards. You may not hear from me until this is what we want to do. But it's all about that networking.
Well, as we close, I want to acknowledge the profound generosity embedded in this exhibition with the curator, Clark, and Dr. Taylor, and the generosity of an artist who has spent a lifetime translating memory and nature into form, the generosity of institutions willing to collaborate across regions, and the generosity of collectors and community members who safeguard these stories. Freddie Styles' work reminds us that abstraction is not an escape from the world, but a deeper way of seeing it, its rhythms, its histories, its quiet miracles. And tonight's conversation affirms that when artists, institutions, and collectors come together with intention, they create not just exhibitions, but ecosystems of care that allow legacy to take root. Thank you all for being part of this moment.
Let's give another round for our panelists tonight. Do you members of the audience have any questions for the artists or Dr. Key or Kerry Davis or Halima? Who wants the mic? Somebody always wants the mic.
I just have a comment.
Yeah, because we want to capture it on the...
I just wanted to say I found it very funny that each of you thought you weren't answering the questions. I think you all answered them beautifully, and even if you didn't, I think it's portrayed through your work. Yeah, that's the comment that I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Beautiful work.
So, Mr. Styles, about a year to the day last year, you told us that you wanted to have an exhibition in this space. A year later, you're here. And so now, yes, clap, 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 clap. And so now I would like to give you an opportunity to manifest something that you want to happen over the next year. What is something that you would like to see in March of 2027 that's going to occur in your life, in your career?
That's nice, that's nice.
Well, let me see, what would I like to do? I'd like to have another major show somewhere. Y'all might not want me back here. But I'd like to have a major show somewhere because this has been so rewarding and affirming. Having had a health scare, I want to be healthy enough to produce another body of work that can be shown somewhere. Did I answer your question?
I think we should call the next show. Did I answer your question?
I have a question, and anyone can answer. Multiple answers is fine. As someone who is an emerging curator, I am trying to be more intentional about doing studio visits and building relationships with artists and thinking about future exhibitions. As you said, Eric, we're trying to plan 2 years in advance for things. But I think something that Dr. Taylor and I have had conversations about is when going to studio visits and seeing artists, sometimes you go in there like, what do you think of my work? And I'm always trying to figure out how to answer that question, because sometimes you see the work and like this isn't quite it yet, or sometimes you think maybe, you can tell they have something, but it needs a little bit more time to develop, or sometimes it's like, I don't know, because sometimes it's like aesthetically it's beautiful, but contextually it doesn't give you something that can fill up a space like this. Because sometimes I think, artists are trying to just produce, and not like thinking deeply about their work. So what do you say, I guess, in terms of advice when having those kinds of interactions, but also for artists as well as they're going through their processes?
I don't know if I have the magic answer, but I think it's an honest answer. And the honest answer is always be honest and true, but also be sensitive to who is standing in front of you. Because I never go in and say, okay, it's not quite there. I generally change the conversation to where I can have just, you go and let me just dig through the files, let me just do my thing. And when I find that piece that resonates with me, then we can have a conversation. It's not easy because there are works that's not quite there. They have the talent, but there's something missing. And I use Barthet, his sculptures, as an example. When you look at Barthet's sculpture, and if you look at it carefully, the spirit of the subject is captured in the sculpture. And I don't know if that's just me being crazy, but when I compare it to his sculptures to other artists who's produced a figurative sculpture or just a portrait or head, then sometimes there's something missing. That sculpture, that head, that portrait doesn't resonate with me like the way that this artist did, who happened to have been an African-American artist. That's why I said something about African-American artists who are producing it. There's something in there about their journey and something about the way that they can capture those spirits in the work. And I tend to, I don't know, I'm crazy, but hey, it is. But I think that's, as a curator, you have to continue to go. You have to. And then you can get into a position where you can give them advice. Go to the museum. I just had this conversation last year with an artist in our area and said, you're producing some good work, but you need to know and need to see what other artists are doing as well. So go to Art Basel or an annual or a fine art show that's in your area and look at the art. And even myself, that's what I do when I go to museums, because I'm looking at the work from a different lens. And I'm looking at how, what, when, where, and how they were able to capture what they wanted on canvas and paper. So it's all about honesty and just taking on a different life.
Can I answer? Can I add to that?
Oh, sure.
I just wanted to say that generally, I think that artists are making art for themselves and strangers. And so I have found when going to artist studios, true, you should be honest about the experience that you're having. But it also, you have to read the room and the artist too, to know what you can and cannot say to be helpful, or how, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because you don't ever want to unintentionally destroy or hurt the energy that they're bringing to what they're creating. They're in process. I think that's an important thing to remember too, that a lot of times they're always in a perpetual state of process. They're in the moment, but they're also in process. And many of them are having their own internal experiences. Some of them are engaged in a lot of research and they're still reflecting. And I think that it's important to allow yourself to have your own experience. I tend to be very quiet when I go to an artist's studio because I want to feel their energy in the space. And then I allow them to share what they want to share. Because often when artists share what they want to share, you can engage in a whole other level of conversation than when you go in there with a gazillion questions, or or you have preconceived ideas, and you'll often discover things that they don't make public. Like I remember many years ago, when I had a gallery in Gramercy Park, my partner and I, we did an exhibition of Jack Whitten's work. And at another time, months later, we saw him, and then we went to his place, at that time on Lispenard Street, and he had all of these amazing sculptures, but those were private works. Those were not work that anybody ever saw until his retrospective came out before he died. But he considered those very private, and he did all of that work in Crete. There's a lot of times that you'll have an opportunity to see things and you get another dimension about who the person is, what's inner and outer, seen and unseen. And it is tricky when you see, as you're going as a curator, or even as a collector, to see work and you're drawn to it, but it's sort of like, not yet, but I like, and you kind of do this back and forth. And I think a lot of artists can sort of sense that, but at the same time, that's part of the experience. It's like jazz, it's improvisation, it's call and response. And as we keep evolving and changing, so are the artists as well. So I go back to what you're saying. It's important to be honest with yourself, but also with the artist, but to be sensitive to the moment that you're in with them.
If there are any other questions, why don't you just come on over here?
My question is from the perspective of artist versus collector/curator. What is considered a favorite may differ. So if you have one, I would love for you to share your favorite piece of work and why.
In the show?
In the show. And why.
Oh God.
If you have one.
Okay, I'm gonna start first. There were a lot of favors for me since I curated the exhibition and selected the work, and then there was just some that, as a collector, that resonated with me because it was different. I had one piece in the notice style of Freddie, but then I learned there was a piece that he did with pine needles, and that just sent bells and whistles through my head that I just really, every time I walk past it, I stop to look, because you don't think creating artwork with pine needles. For young kids, what's a pine needle? But you see this depth and how he just used natural, what was available, in creating a wonderful piece of work. And just happened to have been with pine needles. The landscapes, everything kind of resonated me almost for different reasons, even from the figurative, because I also like what appears to be outside of art, yet Freddie is quite trained. But yet it has that free form, the looseness in it. So I enjoyed those. And it was even in my personal collection, I don't think I ever give one artist that kind of energy, because every one of the pieces that I have, I love them all, and all for different reasons. Even though I'm more familiar with certain artists than I am with others, that I could talk about Samela or Elizabeth and Bartha and those people. But there are other artists, younger artists that I have that I'm still learning as they evolve because they are young artists and they're exploring new. It's very rare that one artist stays with the same technique. That's all I'm going to do is a landscape for the next 100 years. They usually and they're changing. So I'm continuously learning what they're doing and as they evolved.
Confining favorite piece in this show. Now, I've seen these works for so many years, and I've housed these works, a lot of them, for so many years. So I have many favorites. It's no one favorite, for different reasons, like Eric said. The Summertime Rainbow was a favorite, and this piece was in my home for over 10 years, I'm sure. And there's a small figurative piece, Reclining Nude, 1958,
Oh, the one over here?
1965.
It's over here, yeah.
When I first saw it, fell in love with it immediately because I knew Freddie as an abstract artist. I didn't see the very, very early works. And there are others that, some not here, but he can draw as well. So I have many favorites, but a lot of them are the stories behind them that Freddie has shared with me. So they too have special meanings. The Azalea Roots painting, the Pine Needle paintings. It's just so many. And I have the good fortune of being a very, very close friend of his, so I'm satisfied in the painting areas I have all of my favorite paintings, I think.
I'm simply hoping to hit the lottery tonight, then quite a few of these will be my favorite. Do you have a favorite, Fred?
I guess I don't have a real favorite. I love all of them. I was trying to think if I could single one piece out as a favorite. This painting back here, I don't know if it's actually a favorite or not, but this was the first painting I did after going through horrible losses of friends to AIDS in 1985. It's called Eddie's Fantasy, and I had a good friend, Ed Brown, who was actually H. Rap Brown's brother. Ed and I became friends. Ed would look at my work, and at some point I saw us becoming friends, and I knew he didn't like my work. So one day I approached him. I said, Ed, I know you don't like my work, but we like each other and we can be friends, so it's okay. He's afraid I just don't get it. I said, maybe one day you will. And at some point he ended up with, I think, 3 pieces. One of the pieces in 2006, I had a show here, Old New Borrowed Blue, and a piece from his collection was a part of that show. So that's because Ed when people keep promising, I call it threatening. He was threatening to buy it, but he never did. So that's one of my favorites. But I can't, they're all my babies. So I can't just pick one.
Tina.
Oh, Tina's all right. I was going to answer the question.
Oh, you can go when she gets up here.
Right? Oh, okay. So quickly, I don't have one, I don't know if you know this, but I don't have one favorite piece. I have had a very unique experience with your work that I have not had with any other artist's work in my career. And what that experience is that, to answer the question, is that I have very visceral and emotional experiences with each of the works, and it reflects the whole sphere of not only spiritual interest and connection to nature, but also my moods. And so I feel connected in different ways. I react to each of the pieces. That's not always the case. You like some pieces and you don't like others, but there's an aspect, I see an aspect of myself and feel, I should say, an aspect of myself in all of your work. And that's the first time I've had that experience.
The experience that I had walking through, when I first walked through the exhibition, before it opened, and to the point that Halima's making, and the works are really different in a way of frequency. I feel like they're more musical. I hear songs. I hear music coming from each one of these pieces that are quite comforting. So I wanted to say that, and congratulations, and I love the exhibition, I love the work. And I wanted to also respond to Clark's question, because I had the several occasions, quite often, when artists would come to the office, as well as I did some visits. But the question, of course, was always, how was I going to respond? Well, one of the things I finally came to realize was that I needed to ask them, what were they hoping to learn from me, from the visit? I think just putting the question back to them in order for me to really understand how then I was going to respond, because there are some artists who will come that they come for you to tell them how fantastic the work is. And that's not what we're here to do. So I think by posing that question, will give you some ground about how you want to approach what it is you're saying. Thank you. All right.
I'm going to take the privilege of the last question. So, Freddie, you said you want to create more work. So what are you imagining to do next? Are you going to, what else, what are you getting ready to birth now?
Well, I've been thinking about, the mic. Well, before I answer your question, what I would like to say to everyone here who doesn't know Tina Dunkley. I said, when we were here last time, I said, I think of this gallery as the phoenix that Tina rose from the damp basement to this lovely space through her efforts.
Absolutely.
And I think whenever I get a chance to give her a shout out for that, I do. Because the collection was in the basement. Now the old gallery is climate controlled storage. And this lovely gallery, so I'm old enough to have gone to shows in the old gallery downstairs. So I always give a shout out to Tina for elevating it from there to here. Now, I've been thinking about how I can incorporate the tragedy of my fire with my renewal, and I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but like I said, there's been these rainbows in my head, so I don't know what the new work will be. I just feel fortunate to still be here I was telling one of my doctors that I'm happy to be here to be able to do whatever I decide to do because of my surgery and getting out of the fire unscorched and burned. So I don't know. I've started priming some paper, and I actually I was working on a painting that I was going to present to E. Patrick Johnson as a housewarming gift when I discovered the fire. So I've started a 3 by 4 foot painting to sort of continue where I was when I discovered the fire. But I don't know where it will go. I really don't. And like I said, I keep seeing these rainbows in my head. I don't know if I will do them or not. But So I know I didn't answer your question.
No,
but
no,
I
you
did the best I
answered what
could.
you could, but I want to thank everyone for coming out.